What is your thoughts on the mindset of the fighters today versus the fighters back then?
Back in the day, fighters, they lose, they would beat themselves up, and they would try and figure out what I need to do to be better. Nowadays, a fighter loses, the first thing they do is blame the manager, blame the coach, blame the system.
Has there been anything else that's been really challenging for you as you've gone down this path, and from a business perspective or even personal?
Yeah. The teacher told me one thing one time that stuck with me. She said, cracking jokes and watching sports is never going to get you anywhere in life. Afterwards, she said, don't mistake what you did as support. You were just fuel. You didn't help me.
Do you think it's just fighters? Do you think it's just this generation in general? Back then, you really had to have a love for what you were doing because there was just no money in it. I made $250 to fight top 10 guy in the world. They're making millions of dollars. All right, I got a great buddy of mine from the past here. His name is Goz from MMA Junkies. We have a little bit of a history because I love MMA as he does, and he loves beer, and I used to own a brew pub. So go for it, brother. Just tell people about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, I mean, we met quite a while ago, and it's so funny because I do love beer and I do love MMA, and it's like I grew up in Orange County, California, and I moved to Vegas to do what I do, to go to university here and for what I do as a job. But when I first moved here, it was challenging meeting new people, and not just meeting them, but kind of like finding people that you have something in common with. And so right away with you, I just clicked. I'm like, dude, he loves a lot of the same things that I love, and we're roughly the same age. So yeah, that's how we kind of got to know each other. And you helped us out with a couple of things too, as well, with our show. And so I'm always grateful to you. And Vegas doesn't feel the same with you gone.
That's super sweet. I miss that whole dynamic. I mean, people don't realize like opening that brew pub was like the coolest thing ever. And I tell people all the time, because that's all I do is work with founders on businesses now. And it's like, when you open up something like that and the culture is so deep, it's like people literally like want to work with for you for free. Like it's just such a cool environment. It's so cool culture. And I think there's also a component of that with MMA, like guys just trying to come in and give their information and just be around the guys or just fight and train. And it's very family oriented. I had Eric Nixick on here last season and just talking about that family orientation. And then also you've been in Vegas long enough to know how small it really is and how connected we really are. But I really actually, I just want the founders that watch the show to kind of hear a little bit about your story. I mean, from what I know, I mean, you kind of fell into the whole podcasting thing. Is that correct? And this is when, I mean, was Joe Rogan even around yet podcasting? I don't know. I mean, you guys
No, we used to wake up Joe Rogan to do interviews. So yeah, he wasn't around then.
Yeah. Tell us about how that got going.
So, well, my real name is Brian. Okay. A lot of people don't know that. The reason why I go by Goz is because when we started our show, podcasting didn't even have that name of podcast. There was no name for it. And my family have like a lot of doctors, lawyers, dentists, things like that, right? And so I was right around the time where I was going to school and all that. And I just felt weird telling people this is what I'm going to try out for now. And so I said, you know what? I don't want to use my real name. Goz is a nickname that my brother gave me when I was a little kid. I go, let's just use that. And so I got stuck with that. And so now everybody calls me that. And it's funny because when I run into people that I went to high school with, they'll ask me what I do for a living, and I tell them, and they'll go, "Oh, like that Goz guy that graduated with us," and I'm like, "That's me. Like, that's who I am." And so nobody's like half of my life doesn't know who Goz is, and then the other half only knows Goz. But we were fans of a radio show. It was called Sound Off Radio from MMA Weekly. It was hosted by Ryan Bennett and Frank Trigg, and that was our routine every day. Like this was a sport that people didn't accept back then. So the community is very, very small. So when you would run into somebody, like when you go to school and you saw somebody with a tap out shirt, you'd lose your mind. You're like, oh my God, I can talk to somebody about this. So having this group of people that would listen to the show and go in their chat room every day, and you would make friends from all around the world, that was our routine. So before school, I would listen to the show, and then I would go to university, and my brother, same thing, would go to work. And they would put this thing out where they'd say, like, we're going to be in LA for UFC 48 or something like that, right? And they would invite people to come out. So we would go out and we met them, and we kind of just became friends with them. So every time they would come anywhere near us growing up in Orange County, and then, Vegas is so close, we would try and meet up with them. And so we just became friends. And one show was UFC 50, I believe, was at the Staples Center. And after that show, Ryan Bennett, the host of the show, he passed away in a car accident. And so the show just stopped. And our routine of going every morning and talking to all these people in the chat room, hearing the show, we'd still show up every day. We would all chat. How's everybody doing? Talk about some of the new latest stuff. But after a while, a group that was like 100 every day turned into like 70 and then 50. And then, it started dwindling. And so one day, I was at IHOP with my brother, and we were just talking about how sad it was. We used to love this so much, and it's gone away. And at the time, I had been doing, just going to give your audience an idea of how old I am, but I would do interviews on MySpace, and I'd cover Pride using my MySpace credentials. And so I had this blog, and I would interview fighters, and then I would do like rants and stuff like that. But it got really big, and it got to the point where every day when you post a blog, it'd have like the top 10, right? So it was like Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton. And I was always like number 6, in the top 10, number 4. And so I had this audience, and I told my brother, I go, well, have you ever thought about like, why don't you do a show with Trigg, the Frank Trigg, the leftover guy? And he was like, well, how would I do it? And I was like, dude, I'll take care of everything. You guys just talk. So we called him up and we asked him, would you be interested in doing this? And he's like, well, I've been asked, but I kind of only want to do it with people I like. And because I like you guys. So let's do it. So from the moment that we did that, we said, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And so we hired all these people that knew about podcasting equipment and stuff like that. And 6 months later, we did our first show, and it just blew up from there. It would not stop. Like, people loved having a show. They loved the fact that a fighter was on, that you could call in and all that. And so all the things that we were working towards in our personal lives kind of got put to the shelf a little bit. So like, I have a degree in psychology, and I went to school and I graduated. Never, this was always just gaining traction on that, gaining traction. And this is where my focus was. And before I knew it, now this is in a few months will be 19 years of doing our show, and we've never looked back. We've never been able to catch up. It just keeps growing and keeps growing, and the sport now is huge. So that's kind of how this got started.
Dude, that's crazy. I mean, I guess the first question I have is what happened to Frank and how'd you slide in there?
So, okay, on day one, when we put this all together, I told them, I go, look, I have this audience. I will announce it to them, bring them over. But the one thing I don't want to ever do is talk. I just want to produce it and screw around. And that went away in the first episode. We were so nervous that first episode. And so we were picking up Frank Trigg from the airport, and he had just fought Robbie Lawler. And so we had this game plan of what we were going to do. We made the announcement. This is when we go live. So we pick him up about like 45 minutes before the show started, because the airport was like right next to our house. And we go, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the fight. We're going to do this and that. And Frank, first thing he says is, nope. And we're like, nope. And he's like, we can't talk about the fight. And we're like, that's the whole premise of the first show and why you're here. And he's like, we can't do it. And we're like, why? And he's like, I don't remember any of it. And so we're like, oh my God. So we get home, and my brother's like, dude, okay, I have my co-host doesn't want to talk about a fight because he doesn't remember it. And I'm scared. This is my first show. He goes, I need you to help me, like, talk, do some stuff. So then we started, I think Frank was like, do a tequila shot, he'll take off the edge. We did one, and we were like, we don't feel anything. He's like, do another one. And we did another one. And then we started the show, and I think we were just a little bit more tipsy than we thought. And it just, everything flowed a little better, I guess. Maybe it did take the edge off. And I was talking, George was talking, Trigg was talking, and we just felt like the dynamic of the three of us was just better. And so that's how I slipped into just being a co-host and actually talking.
That's crazy. You're just like day one, let's go all in. A couple shots of tequila and I'm all in. I like it.
Pretty much.
I'm just gonna ask questions selfishly for myself. I'm sure
Yeah.
the people want to know, but I'm curious how you got. I mean, you were at Mandalay Bay for a very long time. I don't know if you're still there. I think you are.
Studio's still there.
Okay.
So what happened with that was this show, man, like, things were almost ridiculous how easy they would come from time to time. And one day we were just walking by and we saw a guy doing a show, And we were like, wouldn't it be cool to do the show there? And we asked the guy, like, how'd you get in here? And he goes, oh, I could set you up with a meeting or whatever. So we had a meeting and we got there and they said, well, what do you do? And we told them we have a fighter. And they said, okay, well, how about 3 months, do your show, and then we'll reconvene and we'll see from there. We were waiting for them to go, and the rent is this, but they never said anything. So we're like, okay. So we took all of our stuff and we started broadcasting from Mandalay Bay. And after 3 months, we had this meeting again. We came back and they kind of looked at us and they go, well, we don't know what the hell you guys are doing, but when we get like our reports of like our Google reports and all that, it's littered with you guys. It's like at the very top. So we don't care what you're doing. Just keep doing that. And so we stayed there for just a little bit over 10 years. When the pandemic hit, all the hotels closed down, right? So
Yeah.
luckily, George and I, there were some things that we were noticing. We're just going down there to do stuff that takes like 20 minutes. And then we have to come all the way back. So we started building a home studio. So I have like this back here, right? We were just doing that when the pandemic hit. And so we were on Sirius XM and all of our equipment to connect to them was there. And so we came home, we started doing things this way. And so after about 3 months, I think they reopened, but you had to wear a mask. And so can you imagine what I would sound like if I'm on the radio trying to do it with a mask? But that was just the rule that they had. And so 3 months turned into about 8 months. And by then, the world just changed. People were used to doing things this way. So fighters would be like, oh man, I got to drive to Mandalay Bay. I got to pay for parking. I got to go in your studio. I'm going to sit there for an hour. That's like 2 hours of my day are gone for something that I can just do in 15 minutes from home. Because now everybody else is starting to use Zoom and stuff like that. So our show had to adapt. So to answer your question, the studio is still there. We can use it when we like. It's just to do what we need to do, we would have to take a lot of equipment, set it up, do it, and then bring it all back. And for something that, like, basically you and I are about to do in an hour, right? It would take 3 hours over there. So we still have it. We could still use it, but right now we do mostly everything from home.
That's awesome. It's so much more convenient. I think there are some drawbacks to not being in person all the
Yeah.
time, but I do think it's made the world much more convenient. So, all right, I have a question for you then. I'm curious because you have a completely different path than me, like all these just doors open, flooding, like what has been, I mean, you already talked about the pandemic, but has there been anything else that's been really challenging for you as you've gone down this path and from a business perspective or even personal?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So a lot of it was at the start with people just not accepting this to be anything that's going to stick around. It's a violent sport, and a lot of people were not on board in the beginning. And so people would think I was like crazy when I would tell them what I do for a living. And a lot of family members too, like, what are you doing with your life? That sort of thing. And I remember when I was in school, I loved the sport so much that I would record these fights, right? And I would put them all on one VHS. And I'd take them to school and I'd try and show my friends, and I would eventually like sell tapes, for like $10. And a teacher pulled one out of my backpack one day and she just said, you're not supposed to have this. And the next day, I came back to school and she told me, I watched that tape. I need you to go to the office today at like 1 p.m. or something. I'm like, okay. So I go to the office and I'm in this room with all these people. There's like the district psychologist is there and the principal, assistant principal, she's there. And they were asking me like, are you okay? Or like, do your parents beat you up? Or, are you all right? I remember when they like shook my hand, they kind of like one of them raised my shirt a little bit. I think they were looking for like bruising and stuff. And I was like, what's going on? And they're like, well, we saw what was on your tape and we want to know why you like so much violence and what's going on with you. I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I love boxing. I do martial arts. I do karate here at this school. You guys have a class at night. And I just like it. I think it's really cool. And the teacher was really mad. And I remember she told me one thing one time that stuck with me. She said, cracking jokes and watching sports is never going to get you anywhere in life. You need to be serious about it. And I always like stuck that with me. It always stuck with me. It's so like throughout my whole life, I had a lot of people that would always say that, like, what you're doing is just a fad. You need to invest in the future in your life. This is never going to work out. And so part of it, you get upset because you're like, this is something I love and I'm not getting support. But at the same time, some of it is like fuel, right? It's like, well, okay, wait till I prove you wrong. And so actually to tie that whole story together, about this is going on like 15 years now. I got asked by that high school to come back and speak to the. I thought I was going to speak to like a class, you know. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's no problem. I'll go and I'll talk to 30 kids. So they bring me in the gym, and the whole class, the whole school's there, and I'm like, what's going on? One of the American Gladiators was there. I guess he graduated from our school, and some like real famous radio DJ.
No shit. In Vegas. Or is
Yeah,
this Orange County?
no, this is Orange County. And
Okay. Okay.
so as I'm up there and I'm like, dude, I'm not expecting this. And so I go up there and I kind of tell a little bit of what I do and what my story is. And I saw that teacher in the crowd. And it was like everything I wanted to talk about went completely out the window. And
You
I
get
was
right
like,
there.
I'm going to tell you guys a story. And I told the story of what they told me. And I said,
Wow.
in life, a lot of people are going to try and push you down and keep you down. And you, at the end of the day, what you want to do for a living, you have to like it. You have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy your life. And anyways, I told the story of what that teacher said. I didn't point her out, but she heard and she remembered, and afterwards she came up to me and she kind of played it off like, "Oh, I guess I had a big influence on you." And I was
She
like,
said that.
"Yeah,
That's
don't mistake what you did as support. You know, you were just fuel, but you didn't help me." But yeah, life has been kind of like, I think that's like the hardest part is people just not taking what I do for a living serious. And now I get the chance to tell them, well, look, I've been doing it for 19 years. I work for USA Today. It's the biggest newspaper in the world. I'm proud of the things that I've done. Maybe had I gone another route, I could have more things or different things or have lives that's closer to what seems to be normal. But I don't know that I'd be happy. And at the end of the day, I'm a happy person doing what I'm doing.
bro. One, I just want to thank you for such a vulnerable and powerful story. Like, I just think it's so beautiful. And I think about your life, right? I mean, like, you get an opportunity to be around all the people that, like, it's like you're the biggest fan ever.
Yeah.
And they're like in your lives and you're probably friends with them, you
Mhm.
know? And I think that that's awesome. It's, I'll say a couple of things. One is, it is a little crazy, to be a fighter.
Yeah.
It is really violent. And, I've been in the cage. And I think one thing I would say is we were joking earlier that, I made $250 to fight top 10 guy in the world at the time, Jason Miller. And your buddy spent $250 at the movie theater the other day, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting to me because back then, you really had to have a love for what you were doing because there was just no money in it. I mean, Dana White, I think, lost money for a decade, they said.
Hmm.
And I even remember it being so popular, but so like even when jujitsu, like you go to Grappler's Quest and there'd be guys in the corner, warming up like they were going to go box, but they're going to go grapple because it was all so new and nothing had really developed yet. And I guess what I want to lead that statement into is what is your thoughts on the mindset of the fighters today versus the fighters back then? And I'll just give you an easy example. Mike Tyson said he's like, I was a killer. These kids today are just in it for the money. And I'm just curious your thoughts because I mean, MMA is not boxing money yet, but bro, they're making millions of dollars. You know what I mean? And we were not. I mean, we were making. I mean, if you were a pro and you were winning, you were making 100 grand, 200 grand. That's a big difference.
There's a big difference between the old guard and the new guard. And I always tell, if a fighter for some reason asks me for advice, the number one thing I always tell them is when you come across some of these legends of the sport, pull them aside and shake their hand and thank them for what they did, because what they went through compared to what you're going through is completely different. And had they not gone through that, you wouldn't have what you have today. And I think one of the probably the biggest things that stands out to me is accountability. Back in the day, fighters, they lose, they would beat themselves up and they would try and figure out what I need to do to be better. Nowadays, a fighter loses, the first thing they do is blame the manager, blame the coach, blame the system. I'm going to move camps, I'm going to do this, do that. And they keep doing that. And every fight, there's a different story. And I think they're not as accountable because they've been given everything. You go to the UFCPI, they didn't even have health insurance when you were doing this, like they didn't have any of these things. I remember being around fighters like Trig, we'd be doing the show and he'd look at his phone and he'd go, oh, okay, we got training today. And it was just a text message between him, Frank Mir, Randy Couture, Marvin Eastman, and they would just pick like a gym and go, we'll be here today at 6. That's how they got their training in. And they were so excited when somebody new came in. They're like, oh, dude, I don't know any striking. Now I can learn from this guy. This guy didn't know any jujitsu. Do you get everything now? The UFC PI is there. There's coaches everywhere. There's gyms on every corner. You have to be thankful for some of those things that the old guard had to go through for you to get that. And those are probably the two biggest things for me, man. Our fighters, I think, today need to be a little bit more accountable for what they have to bring to the table. They're so used to everybody giving things to them that they don't earn it the way your generation did.
I was going to actually ask you that if you think it's generational, and I'll just express this is that, I'll give you a couple examples. So we wanted to learn jujitsu and there was no jujitsu in Las Vegas, literally zero.
Crazy, huh?
So we would drive to Torrance to train with Higan Machado and come back. And then John Lewis comes to town and I can't train with John because he's Nova Una and these guys are Machados. But I'm like, damn it. Like these guys are like really good at what they do. And then John started bringing in Tito and Chuck and all the guys. And it was just, yeah, it was such a different world back then. And, I even remember Rafael Lovato Jr. saying that his father and him would go from Oklahoma City or Oklahoma somewhere down to Texas for the weekend. I think to train with Carlos Gracie. I can't remember who it was. No, to train with Shande. And Shandi, like imagine just like having to travel like to another state and spend the night for 2 nights once a month just to get some information so you could train. And then you go to a place like I'm in Colombia in Medellin and like we have an awesome school. The black belt's at Cobrinha black belt teaching. He's a great guy, Gijo. It's wild. And I guess the real question to you is, do you think it's just fighters? Do you think it's just this generation in general?
I think it's a lot of it is generation, and like I think even I think every generation is responsible for something. Like we're probably the same generation, and I'm sure our parents kind of looked at us, and went, "Look at these dorks running around on their bikes and their skateboards. I wish I had that." Like things like that. But you have to be able to be thankful for what you have, but also not to forget to constantly help out other people. Because you never know what situation people are in and what they have to do to get to think about all the distance that you're traveling, right? Like I'm sure there's somebody that could always say, hey man, crash at my place, wake up the next morning, do another session, then go home, try and help as many people as you can. But we spoke to a guy, Santiago Luna. He's new. He's 7-0 and he's already had one fight in the UFC, and his nickname is Border Boy. And the reason it's Border Boy is because he grew up in San Diego, but when he was like 3 or 4, his family moved to Mexico. And so his last 2 years of high school, he went to school in the United States. So he would wake up at 4 a.m. to cross the border, go to the United States just to go to school. And then he fell in love with like wrestling and jujitsu and all this stuff. So then he would drive all the way to LA to train with Arman Sarukian. Then he got to one point where he was back living in Mexico, would wake up at 3 a.m. to drive to Los Angeles to train and then drive back to Mexico. I mean, you have to love something a lot to be able to put yourself through something like that at that young age. I think this kid's like 21 or something like that. But you look at that, mindset is so important for what fighters do. And so people always ask, like, why are these wrestlers so dominant? A lot of it is because that's what wrestling does for you from an early age. You can't take a day off. You'll feel it in the gym. You'll feel that people are getting better because they were there yesterday and you weren't. And so you see people with that type of mindset and you think, not only is this guy probably going to become a great fighter, he's just going to be a great human being overall, because that same mentality transfers over into everything in your life, business, relationships. You really, when you take time off, you do, but you really don't appear. And that type of mentality, that type of person, you can just tell that guy's going to be something.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that and I was thinking about, just the difference in mentality. Like, you know, I got a family member, he's probably gonna listen to this and be pissed off, but and he loves jujitsu, but like it's like, oh, I can't get up early and train, or oh, I can't. And I'm just like, dude, like you gotta, and he works his ass off. But my point is like, you've got to make it a priority, and it doesn't fit into your life all the time. That's the point. It's not supposed to. I remember I was living in Green Valley. It was right before high school and right before I got into reality based martial arts, before I got into combat sports. I was 12. Actually, I don't think this is okay, by the way. I was taking two buses, one all the way up Sunset to remember Vacation Village?
Yeah.
And I would get off at Vacation Village at 12 years old, and I'd jump on the strip bus and take that all the way down to Fashion Show Mall. And then I had to wait 45 minutes for a bus to take me up to Spring Mountain to Barry's Boxing. But I was like, fuck that. So I would walk from Fashion Show to Barry's Boxing every day because I didn't want to wait the 40, because by the time I waited, I could have been there in 30. So I'm like, oh, I'll just walk. It's a 30-minute walk. And I was doing that at 12 years old because that's what I wanted to do, you know? And I think that what I've learned is when you want something, you do it, you know? And it's, and just to give you like a little bit of just about that culture piece, I agree that I think every generation looks down at the other generation like, these guys are kind of wimps or whatever, you know? But I think it's so different now because I asked a buddy of mine, I was 40 at the time, I'm 47 now. And my buddy, Dave Ledbetter, awesome guy. And he was like 55-ish at the time, 52-ish. I was like, hey man, am I just getting old? Because, you know, I'm approaching 40, or I was 40 right there. Is this generation just like, I don't get it? And he's like, nah, bro. He's like, because I said, did you think that way about us? He goes, no. He goes, you guys were fine. He goes, you guys, you know, you little whatever, you know, but he goes, this generation, he goes, I just do not understand. He goes, they're just softer. He's like, and I was like, okay. So I really do think it is a bit of an interesting switch between, you know, Gen X, like I am, and millennials to the you know, that kind of millennial Gen Z.
This new generation is very, very different, I would say. Uh,
Yeah.
One thing that I don't know how I would have handled that their generation has to put up with is, you know, I'm sure at some point in life somebody had like a bully or somebody that teased them. But when you would go to school, that lasted through whatever recess or lunch when you would see that person. But when you went home, it was over until the next day. But now with these things, it continues all day long, right? Through social media, all that. Like you have to keep up this persona all day long. I don't know how they do that part of it. That part's very different. And then the other thing I don't understand, to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, is it just me or does the music kind of suck? And I have to imagine, like, if I'm in my room and I'm playing Nirvana, which was probably pretty popular when I was in high school, my dad's probably going, what is going, like, why is that guy screaming? But he could at least probably go, but hey, man, that guy's playing the shit out of the drums. That guy's
Yeah.
hitting his guitar. Okay, it's not my cup of tea, but I kind of get it. I don't understand mumble rap one bit. I don't get what, I just feel like you have to be talented if you're a musician. And a mumble rapper to me is like, if the mumble rapper didn't show up and they go, "Well, we have no concert," and somebody said, hey, could you do it? I think if you gave me like 20 minutes and I just wrote something down, I think I could do it.
A
And
few
if they
shots
just,
of tequila goes. A few
yeah,
shots of
and people
tequila.
just like say that this is little bastard or whatever, and I go up there and I do it. It just sounds like they're reading like their Target shopping list or something, you know? It's like it doesn't really, I don't get it. And then most of them, they don't sing live anymore. They don't play instruments. And so I always ask myself, like, am I just being an old guy or is there something to that? And I think there's something to it.
I think so too. And just, you want to talk about mumble rap? I mean, I live in Colombia, and Medellin is it's the mecca of reggaeton, which it can be very mumble. Okay, you know, like it's like, what did you just do? So I think that, yeah, I think that things have gotten easier and easier,
Mm.
and so then it's become more diluted and more diluted, and thus, you know, that is the repercussions or the fallout. You know, just to rewind a touch though, what I will say is social media is such a challenging thing for me. And I'm 47 years old. I have a lot of wisdom, and I can't imagine being 70 and having that pressure and the algorithm just feeding whatever garbage is in your mind and just making it more and more and more. And hopefully it's good. Like hopefully it's puppies and joy and success. And because if it's anything dark, the algorithm is just going to take you down the darkness. And so I will give the young men and women a lot of credit there. It's a very challenging thing to step out of that, what I would call its own separate matrix, and kind of come back to reality. So I think I'd like to see, I do think we will see in the future a swing of the pendulum and more third spaces, more connection, more one to one. And I don't think it'll be a choice, because I think that, I consider us like a human animal, right? Like we need a certain amount of sunlight. We need some hugs. We need sex. We need food. We need water. We need connection. And I don't think the screen can provide that sustainably.
Right.
But bro, I don't know. They got AI girlfriends now. They got like, can you imagine?
Have
I,
you
I
like
can't even.
have you ever been with do you have like nephews or cousins, and you'll see like a pretty girl and they'll go like, "Man, she's cute." And you go talk to her. I'm like, "I don't know how." Because they're so used to the communication through their phone that they
Totally.
don't know how to walk up to somebody and go, "Hey, what's your name?" or "You like this band?" Yeah. They don't
Bro,
have that. They can't do that. And it's so crazy because these phones and computers were supposed to help us, right? And so Mark and I are the same age. So you probably remember back in the day, your list of chores and things you had to do, like if you had to go pay the water bill, you had to either write a check and put it in the mail, or you had to go there and pay it. And that whole process is 30 minutes to an hour, depending on where you live. But then you get your smartphone, you get your laptop, and now that only takes 2 minutes. So instead of using that extra 28 minutes to go outside with your friends and play or have fun or go out with family or whatever, instead of using that extra time for that, you think, what else can I do? I can pay that, I can do this, I can do that. And now all of a sudden, something that was supposed to make our lives easier has actually made it more difficult. And now our bosses are giving us more and more work. And I don't think our brains are wired that way. And I think a lot of people are suffering. They don't know what to do with their lives and how, like, I'm telling you, especially here in Vegas, when you're in a social setting, holy crap, it's like going to the zoo. You're watching people and like nobody knows what to say or do. It's really, really weird, man. You got to be around people.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's so interesting to see. Like, I'll call my nephew and he'll text me back, "Hey, what's up?" He'll push me to like, I'm like, "Bro, I just called you." So I think, and he's in his early 30s, and I can imagine the kids even younger. I have a funny story I got to tell. So I'm like 28, 29 at the time. I'm dating a girl who's younger than me. She's like 20, and she comes in the house and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm paying my bills." She's like, "What do you mean you're paying your bills? Like, what is all that? Those envelopes and those stamps?" And I'm like, "The checkbook." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I got like the water bill, the gas bill, the electric bill, the cell phone bill, the cable bill, the mortgage, the second mortgage, because everything was an 80-20 back then. And she's like, "Why don't you just pay that shit online?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, what is that? I had no idea. I would sit down once a week or once a month, depending on, and it would take me like an hour, and I'd get out the checkbook and I'd like write everything out, and I'd like lick a stamp. I actually think they had sticker stamps by that time. I was, I'm not that old, but yeah, I just think it's funny. So
It took
yeah,
discipline, right, to do that. Every
yeah,
month to know this is do this. This is, you had your little calendar or whatever. And it took discipline to get it done. If you didn't, you get thrown out on the street, your water gets shut off or whatever. Now that's been taken care of for us. And I don't
everything's on
know.
auto pay.
Yeah, it's life
You
is
know,
weird, man.
it's funny. I'll talk about something personal. Is there's just an ambiguous nature to the average, I think, person today growing up, where there's just not a lot of commitment, and it's kind of just like one toe in. And so I'm single, and trying to date, and it doesn't even matter. They could be 25, they could be 45. There's just this kind of like, nobody really commits. Oh yeah, I'll meet you here. An hour later, they cancel, or they just don't show up. Or there's just this lack of accountability. And by the way, I am in Latin America. It's not the most accountable of all the countries in
Or
the world, but but it's still like I experienced the same thing when I was back in Vegas. I really think it's made everybody just kind of be like, you know, whatever. And I think that greatness of any sort comes from discipline and integrity and doing what you say you're going to do. And I think that's a really big challenge for me, because I'm looking for people to partner with, whether that be intimately or business or friendships in this life, to build the things I'm building that are fucking accountable. Man. Like, be more accountable. Just do what you say. Like, I got on here, I opened my screen and you're there. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? What's this guy doing here? And it's like 5 minutes early. And you're like, well, I got to prep just in case. I'm used to everybody being 5 minutes late,
Well, and I
So
don't want you to think like I'm sure because I have to go through this when I'm doing interviews. I wish a fighter would tell me like 20 minutes before or something, see you in a little bit or something, right? Because it puts
yeah,
me at ease because I know they're going through a lot in their day and they might forget. And I built my whole schedule around this interview. So I'm
totally.
gonna like relieve you from having to feel like, oh, he's been here for, I mean, I think I was there for like 30 minutes. I was just chilling,
Dude, that's amazing.
doing
I
some other
appreciate
stuff.
you.
But like, I
That's
want you
really
to know I'm good to go. I told you I would be here at this time. I'm here early in case you need anything or you know, whatever.
Don't you think that's a bit of empathy too that the generation and the culture is missing a little bit? Just genuinely like, let me put that other person at ease. Let me make sure they're comfortable. Let me make sure that I can, I'm a service industry guy. I was a sommelier in Vegas and all the way down to a glass polisher busboy, Win, Bellagio. I mean, it was all about 5 star, five diamond. And I think just the ability to just serve others is what I really think our purpose is as humans.
Mhm.
So to me, it's just such a big deal to be like, how can I just make your life easier, better, and more comfortable, you know?
Yeah, dude, the culture now is everybody's all about what can you do for me? What can you
Totally.
do for me? And especially living in Vegas,
Oh, I
uh,
know.
growing up in Orange County, it's a 3.5 hour drive and it's like a 45-minute flight. So there's constantly people in town. And you would be shocked at how many people, like people I haven't talked to in years. Hey, I'm coming to Vegas. And like the first thing out of their mouth is like, can you hook it up like at the club or a room or
Totally.
something? And I'm like, dude, I haven't heard from you in like 6 years. If I had that power, what on earth makes you think I would use it on you? I haven't even heard from you. And you didn't even like grease me up, like how you been, or like you just kept straight into it.
Dude, let's go.
People are like delusional, man. And sometimes I think I'm weird because I get a kick out of making people happy and helping them out and seeing maybe a piece of advice that I'm giving somebody work for them and then taking in what they have to say and see how I can apply it to my life. And I get happy when my friends are successful, when good things happen. I'm happy. And sometimes I'll see like a really good friend do something kind of cool and then people just shit on them. Yeah, but he's at work all day or he didn't get to go to the playoffs this weekend with us or like and I'm like just be happy for him, that's your friend, like I don't know, this mentality of people is kind of strange to me, dude.
Yeah, it's super strange. What I will tell you though is that, having been nomadic for 5, 6 years, coming back to Colombia, trying to build a community, whether it's going to be here back in the States or in Europe or wherever, I'm really looking for people that are like me. I mean, I consider just everything we've talked about. You have a very similar mentality. And what I would say is I'd rather have a couple guys like you in my life and that's it than have 100 friends that have this mentality. And I think if we just keep showing up and serving and being kind, and of course having boundaries, because motherfuckers will take advantage of us, as we know. Trust me, I'm the hookup guy. I mean, I worked at the #1 restaurant in the city, slinging wine in every nightclub and all these people. And it was like, oh, what can you get me in this club? Can you
Mm-hmm.
get me a comp dinner? Can you get me a room? Can you get me at this day club? And it's like, bro, you know. And then when you do all that, they don't even you barely get a thank you sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's no sense of reciprocation. And you're like, it definitely leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But
You'll see them like post had a great weekend in Vegas or whatever and you're like, do you even pick up the phone to say like, hey, what's up, or want to grab a coffee or something? Like that's when you realize, and I always tell all my family members, my younger family members, don't ever be somebody's plan B. Like when you realize like somebody has been in town for like 5 days and they're just now hitting you up, it's probably because they had other plans and they fell through. Don't ever be somebody's plan B. And there's going to be a lot of people in life that are going to look at you as the guy that they're going to call when their other plans don't work out because they know you'll be there and they know that you'll just put up with it. And you can't do that. Like you're right. Surround yourself with, even if it's a small circle, but let it be a circle. Don't let that circle have any holes or any ways out because those people are toxic in life, man. They really, really are. And sometimes the worst part, Mark, is family can be that way. Like one
hell
of the
yeah.
things that I can't stand is when people go, but he's your family, he's your blood. Bro, family's not defined by blood. It's not. I will show you a bunch of friends that I have that treat me way better than family. They're not related to me by blood, but they are there for me and they're here in my heart. And there are some family members that use that excuse of I'm your family member, so I get to get away with certain things. It's not how life works, man. Some of those people can be toxic too.
Well, I think it's even like, what's your ethnicity?
So I was born in the States. My dad was born in the States as well, and his mom, but their family comes from Mexico. And then my mother is from Peru. She was born and raised in Peru.
So this Latin culture, they have that built-in toxicity. You know, I've seen it here in Colombia many times where it's like, he's family or she's family, so we'll turn a blind eye. And I'm like, well, there's boundaries. You deserve respect. You deserve
Right.
kindness. You shouldn't. And you see a lot of family members taking advantage of each other because no one's going to say anything because it's just part of the Latino culture.
Hmm.
And I think that that's very challenging for me down here because I'll push back immediately. Like I had an ex girlfriend here. We were together for a couple of years, and I would just be like, "What? That's not okay." Yeah, but and you know, another thing too, people don't know about Latinos is there's one side of them that's very aggressive and they can be like, they're gangster, like, but there's also a very, very, I don't want to rock any boats. When you speak the language, it's you don't want to disrespect anybody. There's a lot of niceties, for lack of better words, and so they're very, very. It's in that culture to not offend, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
It can be challenging.
it's very challenging because I think that in life, I do a lot of leadership work, and I think what I tell leaders, and they're actually surprised, so the number one precursor to all like successful relationships is conflict. And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, the more positive conflict you can have and solve in a healthy manner, the more successful that relationship will be." And they're like, "No shit." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a proven statistical, scientific, studied fact." And when, I can tell already you've got some strong boundaries. And you're probably like, "You know what, bro? No, fuck you. Like family or not."
It
But
took
I
a while
think
to
that,
get there, though.
well, it's hard, man, because you're going against the grain. And your grandma's like, "Mijo, what's wrong?" Or, like, "Why are you doing that? I can't believe that." And you're like, "Sorry, grandma, but this guy, he's not being that cool with me." So yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit and just kind of drill you on some of your, yeah, you don't have to answer these questions, but because I know they're kind of like, hard to call favorites, but I'm just curious, like, who's your favorite fighter if you had to pick,
Changes a lot, but what
or a
I
couple?
do appreciate is somebody who is very well-rounded, 'cause that's not easy. If you're really good at one thing, a lot of times it's easy to focus on being really good at that one thing and using that to destroy your opponent. Even when you were a kid, right? Like if you were just great at pulling up and shooting the three or driving the lane, you kind of just did it over and over and you never really like pushed yourself to learn to use your other hand or whatever. Like it takes so much discipline to do that. So when there's a fighter that can kind of do everything, I usually gravitate to somebody like that. And so right now, it would probably be someone like an Ilya Taporia. I love the way I grew up on boxing, and I love how he can translate that traditional boxing, but use it for MMA. Because you can't just be a great boxer and think you're going to walk into MMA and knock people out. That's just not how it works. But you can use a lot of things that you learn there and apply them to MMA if you're smart enough and if you dedicate yourself enough. And I love the way he does that. He knows when to use his speed, when to use his power, and he goes to the body. And I love people who do that. So I like that type of fighter. So right now, if I had to pick one, it'd probably be someone like him.
It's awesome, man. You're way more up on the fight game than I am these days. Mine has always been GSP for that exact reason.
Well, he
I
might be
just felt
my
like,
all-time favorite fighter, though.
I mean, he's just so well rounded and such a classy gentleman. But that was what I loved about him the most. I mean, the guy was rolling with, Olympic wrestlers, and he was going down to Danaher School. And, at the time, can't remember which Gracie right now.
Enzo,
Enzo.
he was with
Yeah.
Enzo a lot.
And just, just all he was down in New Mexico. He was just everywhere. But I'm curious as well. So I'm just gonna ask a few of these. I got like, who do you think is the GOAT?
Probably GSP. Um,
Yeah.
I just, I to it,
Over John? I think GSP too, but everyone's like John, John, John.
I get where they're coming from with that. John has had his controversies as well, right? Which kind of make you think a little bit about what could have been going on. And then, John had a lot of close calls, and GSP didn't have very many of those. GSP had losses, but he avenged the losses. And he did it in a way where, like, the Matt Serra one, nobody ever says, so when are we doing the third one? Like, we didn't need to, we kind of realized that he was just better than him. And then to kind of go up and challenge yourself and win another belt in another weight class, I think is awesome. John Jones did that as well, but I don't know. I felt like
Also a much bigger
GSP,
guy.
yeah, that's scary.
GSP going up, bro, is a lot compared to
People
something like
don't
John with
realize
the
like 10
yeah.
pounds from every weight class, but when you add those 5 pounds, it's not just a number, dude. Like that's a lot more challenging yourself to go from 170 to 185. And
Bro, I was
you
walking
got
around
to
at
finish.
220 fighting at 85s, and I
Yeah,
could have cut
dude.
to 70. People don't realize.
He did everything. Like think about some of the guys with wrestling caliber that he was able to put on their backs, and
Bro,
that wasn't
insane.
his forte. Like he learned that, he pushed himself. There are times where you thought he was going to take you down, and he just jabbed the hell out of you. Like the whole fight. Like he was just very cerebral, and he was a good guy. He's like when you're when your dad is telling you about people on TV, my dad would always point to someone on TV and go, I met this guy at this time or whatever. GSP, you never really hear a bad story. He was just kind of a good person overall, gives back to the sport. He didn't get pushed around too by the organization as some of these guys do.
Another thing too about him, he was just what I've noticed, he's very humble.
Hmm.
Like I've seen him on social media, some dude's like, oh, you should try this. He's like, oh, and he's like literally out on a cruise. The dude's showing him, he's like, oh, I'm going to do that next time. Some wrestler he met on a cruise. Like, not like, do you know who I am? But like, oh, that's really cool. I'm going to
Right.
try that. Who's the scariest?
Like in the cage or just overall?
I think overall.
Do you remember a guy named Gilbert Ivel?
Yeah, of course,
Okay.
dude.
So
Animal.
in Pride Fighting Championships, they came to the United States one time, and Gilbert Ivel was there. Actually, no, wait, this was in Orange County, so he must have been cornering somebody else. And I would just get so excited at seeing some of these Pride guys because we didn't really have access to them. Most of them trained overseas. So I remember he's had his history, being kind of crazy. And I wasn't much of an autograph picture guy, but I was like, man, it's Gilbert Ivel. When am I going to get the chance? So as I was walking up to him, he had just taken off his hoodie. And on the back of his neck, he had a tattoo. I'll never forget this. It said, fuck off. And I was like, oh my God, is that telling me just
I
go
should
away?
not.
But I'm like,
Just go fuck up.
I'm already here. And so I kind of introduced myself and said hi. And he was nice. He was nice. And I'm
Okay.
glad I did it. But yeah, he looked like him and Alexander Emelianenko were very, very scary individuals.
I could see that. Who's the scariest for me was Boss.
Boss Ridden?
Bro, I've trained with him. His eyes, like he's like, you are not normal, dude. You are
Yeah.
just psycho. Like he did a seminar at Sergio Pena's school back in the day when he had Combat Club. And bro, he is there is an evil in that guy. Like I'm just like, you are scary. So yeah, that's awesome. I was gonna ask, who do you think the most mentally tough fighter is in your opinion?
I would probably have to say somebody like Khabib Nurmagomedov. Um, if you look at his career overall, you can't really point to people that he like ran away from or anything. He fought pretty much everybody that was available at the time. And he fought him in conditions that were just look at Connor and the things that he would say to provoke him, about his father, about his family, his religion. And he was mentally tough enough to not take that into consideration and let it apply to his game. He was that strong that it would probably be the equivalent. Like sometimes when people like insult you, I always tell people like, first of all, is it true? If it's true, then maybe it should bother you. But if it's not, what do you care, right? I think maybe he does a little bit of that where he just looks at fighters and goes, "Well, you're not as good as I am, so why should I care? Why should I let that bother me? I can tell you're trying to get under my skin." And a lot of fighters can't do that. They lose their mind and they lose focus. And he was one of those guys that never really did that. He just found a way to grind it out every single time.
Yeah, I when I think of I think of stone. Like he's like stone.
Oh yeah.
It could be he's just like a stone. He's just like and there's a stillness to his mind, almost like a peace. He's very singular focused. Probably not the best guy to hang out and have a few beers with. May not be the most exciting, but very, very focused. I just two more questions I'm gonna say is like, what do you know that the audience might not know of what it's really like behind the scenes? Because me and you both know it's way different than what people see on TV.
It's
I'm
very
just curious.
toxic. There are a lot of people that get taken advantage of. And I think part of it is greed. And I think there's a good batch of people that just don't realize how important they are in the world. They look at it as everything is a gift from a major organization, and they feel like they don't realize that they deserve it and that there's no sport without them. Without the fighters, there's no sport. And every time they speak up, they get a bone thrown at them. But, you look at this Paramount deal, right? Like, look how much money that is. What was the first thing that the UFC did? They raised the bonuses. Well, haven't we been saying that for like the last 10 years that they should have been raised? So did they really do you a favor, or did they kind of do something that they should have done a long time ago and now they made that right? Fighters don't have that mentality sometimes. I think they get pushed around and they don't realize how important they are in this world. And it sucks, because if you've been around somebody that does this professionally, it's not an easy job. It's not like right now when this interview's done, I can go make a sandwich. I can watch TV if I want. That's not the fighter life. That you can't turn it off really. It's very difficult. And so to not be treated well on top of that, that's rough. So I think one thing that people don't realize is what fighters have to go through to be able to entertain you as a fan.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, I know a lot of fighters on a very personal level, training beside them, and it's what I've never experienced such interesting paradox of character because off those mats in real life, there's a lot of self doubt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear. They lack a lot of confidence. Just like you said, they really don't think they're enough. And you throw them a bone and it's like you gave them the world because they're so used to fighting for scraps. And I appreciate what they do because their heart's so in it. Their heart's so in it that they're willing to take scraps, because they want to do it so bad. And I think, as we know, it's like anything in life, though. If you want something so bad, like say you want a girl so bad, well, she's definitely going to have the leverage, if you don't have enough self respect. And what I've seen from a lot of fighters is in that space, it's unbelievable. But outside of the mat, they don't have a ton of self respect. And it makes me sad. And I think that's why you see a lot of, we've seen more and more issues with depression and suicide and with just a lot of issues there. And not to mention, I don't think people realize, like I can guarantee you I've had at least 1,000 concussions, right? When you look at micro concussions and things like that, the stuff that's going on in your brain too, for those poor guys, all the CTE. So yeah,
At
it's crazy.
the older generation now, we're starting to see the effects on them. And if
Yeah.
you grew up knowing those people like you and I have, they're not the same people.
Nope.
There's I always tell this story. I never use the name, but I went on a trip one time from Vegas to California with a fighter. And that fighter told me the exact same story 4 times one way. Same story. Didn't realize they were doing it. And it's like, holy crap, man. Like this is it's not, but I think fighters are smartening up and their careers are getting a little bit shorter. They're like, I'm not
Bro,
gonna do this
their
forever.
sparring is not the same.
Yeah. And they're
Do you remember
making more
Mike?
money, which helps too.
Just think about Mike Pyle and Couture and like Huron. Like you'd walk into that room and they would just be beating each other to death. And they thought that was how you're supposed to do it. And you
Yeah.
see guys like Mighty Mouse, GSP is another example where his coach was like, he shouldn't even be sore. He should not be getting hit in the head that way. Like they really have understood the science behind it. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's and I think the CTE thing is really scary. I won't go too much into it, but I had an incident here back in 22 where I got attacked by an NFL player. And it was pretty crazy. I basically like locked up, took him down. He popped back up. Dude was super strong and spry and went at it again. We ripped the whole table off of the area. And like, I was like, and he was a friend of mine. And I was like, what the fuck is going on with this dude? And I was like, bro, like, and I had like basically body lock, head under the chin. He's like, let me go. I'm like, you're my boy, bro. He's like, if I'm your boy, let me go. And I like let him go. And I'm like ready to throw that elbow. And his eyes pop wide open, goes, and he just runs away. And
Yeah.
we found out that he attacked a couple of people later that that night, and then we got him back to the States. And basically, I can't elaborate too much because I don't. But if you could probably look the stuff up, but he wound up 6 months later killing his mom.
Damn, man.
And this is a guy who was the sweetest guy in the world, had the best relationship with his mom, but he wasn't him anymore. Like the guy was only 32 or 34 years old, man. And it was it was a wild time. I was kicking back in my chair at a cigar bar, and He comes running up, and I thought he forgot something. He comes running around. Imagine me doing that to you. Like, we're boys. Running start. Boom. Just, I'm like, whoosh, and like lifts me up out of my chair. I'm in the air, my feet down. I got to get my feet to the ground. And I remember my buddy telling me later, he's like, I'm so glad it was you. It's like, instead of just some random guest, that like would have just had his whole orbital and everything broke. And you think about that and you're just like, man, like, it's just so sad because we are not paying these fighters well enough. We are ruthless as fans. They're not being taken care of, I think, the way they should be taken care of sometimes. And
Mhm.
they are going to, that, like, look, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to talk about it, but what's going to really happen in the long term to somebody like BJ Penn, poor guy, you know? Like,
Just it's all the foundation of some of the tragedies we've seen. It's all unfolding little by little, and it's so hard, that he's beyond where you can convince him that all these things are happening. Like it's very, very difficult, and we're gonna see a lot of it in the sport, and that's what's so sad about it. Like our bodies aren't meant to do that. Like, have you ever had a friend where they were like in a car crash and they have like a black eye and their arms in a sling? These fighters go through car crashes like once every 3 months, like that same sympathy that you're like, "Oh my god, are you okay? Can I get you something? Can I help you?" They are going through that over and over and over. Your body's just not meant for that.
you're not designed for that. You're not designed to be able to sit in front of somebody and completely be composed while they're punching you in the face is not normal. I would take guys off the street and bring them into the gym. We'd throw gloves on. The moment you started just landing on them, they would turn, cover, and turn away. And these are guys that would fight in the street because it's not normal to just sit there and just take blows.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I think we need to do more for the sport and more for our fighters, though. I'll say that. I just
sure.
have one last question for you. You are an entrepreneur. You ventured out on your own and you were brave. You had a lot of courage. You had a lot of
Thank you.
discouragement, and you did it anyway. And I'm just curious if you have any wisdom or advice for the audience, or maybe even the best advice you've ever been given.
It's a lot, man. So I actually have a list. So I have this list. I call them the golden rules, and I read them every night. And I kind of made them up because I realized this is what's helped me get to where I am. And so the first thing is I take pride in where I'm at and what I've done, but I always want people to remember that I didn't do this alone. And there are times where I didn't even realize that I wasn't doing it alone, but the support, to have a great support system around you, there's no price tag on that. And sometimes you won't even realize they're there because it's just so normal for certain people to be helpful, to give you their time. And if you're a person like me, I try and do that. So when people do it back to me, I feel it. So you brought up a guy like Eric Nixick, right? You just interviewed him. He's a great example of that. That guy will
Phenomenal.
help out anyone. He's always there for you. Those types of people in your life to help you get to where you are, they're irreplaceable. You can't do it all on your own. And you do need a support system, but there's going to be times where you do have to do it on your own, and you also have to be prepared for that. So it's kind of a little bit of a give and take, but I would say your circle needs to be whatever you're comfortable with. Some people like to have a big circle, some people like to have a little circle, but everybody's an individual and everybody's different. Do what makes you comfortable. There are a lot of people in life that are going to try and tell you what to do, and I've always noticed the most messed up people are the ones that have the most to say. Like, they're always trying to tell you in your life, family members, you got to do this, you got to do that, and you're like, well, wait a minute, weren't you just like in trouble a couple of weeks ago? Like, they're always going to want to tell you what to do, and a lot of times they'll have some good advice, but it's not all going to be golden. You have to be able to know how to go through all that stuff and figure out what works for you. You are an individual in this life, and there's going to be certain things that work for Mark that don't work for me, certain things that work for me that won't work for Mark. But I bet you if we laid out about 20 different things, I'm probably going to take probably half of those and go, man, that's a good idea. Don't be scared to try it. Give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? It didn't work out. At least now you know, and you put it in another pile and you move on. But always try and better yourself and look out for everybody along the way as best as you can. The people that deserve it, the people that were there for you, reward them with your time, because your time is a reward. Your time means the world to you. don't waste your time doing stupid shit, man. Like, time is so important in this life. So to me, those are, I'll text you that whole list and you can check it out.
Please, dude.
But I try
Yeah,
and read it every night before I go to bed. And I try because I forget a lot. But yeah, it's, you just got to stay grounded, man, and be happy at the end of the day. Do things that make you happy.
I just got to say, I'm just super impressed and blessed for all the wisdom you shared, man. It's
Thank you.
beautiful. This was
Now, this is
awesome.
fun. This is, when you do your job, this is our jobs right now, right? What we're doing.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
you forget that you're doing a job. You're just like, to
totally.
me, I'm just talking to my boy. I'm just having a conversation. We could have very well done this at a bar. We could have done this
Totally.
at a restaurant. But at the end of the day, if it can help people and service, and this is what we get to do for a living, then we're blessed, man. It's a good day, right?
Yeah, I think there's nothing bigger than the blessing of being able to serve. I really do. Watching people do things that they didn't think was possible is, I know that Eric, I remember even, Sean Strickland was saying, I didn't know I could beat Israel, but Eric was like, bro, you can beat this fucking guy. So he goes, I goes, I believed Eric, and to see
Yeah.
somebody, I'm sure Eric had to be like so proud at that moment. I know there's been issues since then, but so proud at that moment to help somebody do something so emotional, so big, and that they knew they could do it, but there was a lot of self-doubt, I'm sure. I mean, that, and then to accomplish it, it's like you're winning too.
It's so weird that they do this because, like, when they have a failure, like when if you and I fail, sometimes we're the only ones that know about it. They're
Yeah,
failing in front of millions of people. Think about how hard it would be every time you screw up, millions of people find out about it. Like, how
totally.
do you get back to normal? And I always tell people, like, don't be afraid to fail. Like, it's not bad. Like, as long as you learn from it, right? So I always tell people, look, going forward is great. A lot of people always want to move forward in life, and I get that. And there are good things that come from that. But don't be afraid to go backwards a little bit. Because sometimes when you go backwards, you realize what mistakes you've done and it'll help you move forward. The real enemy is always standing still. Nothing gets done standing still. If you're not doing nothing, only bad is going to come from that. So don't be scared to fail. Like I'm proud of Eric and some of the things he's done. And he'll flat out tell you sometimes I made the wrong call and it didn't
Wow.
work out. But he learned from it, and he adjusted and look at what he's done now. Like, even being in Francis Ngannou's corner in boxing, right? Who would have ever
Bro,
imagined to be in a
insane.
situation like that?
Totally, like with him and Dewey, and like it's just a it's crazy because he's just he really is like one of the most amazing people I know. And
Yeah.
I've known him since high school. And I got to know him way deeper on a level. I mean, literally, he first started training martial arts with me and my coach. Like, he had never trained anything in his life. And now I'm like, look at you, you're this pinnacle. And he is literally salt of the earth. He's got this grounded heart. And what's really cool about Eric above anything is I never seen anybody so humble. Like, there is no ounce of ego in that guy's body whatsoever. Come in and do the work and I'll help you.
We've
So
done a lot of military trips where we've gone to Afghanistan, we've gone back east, a lot of different places. But the one guy that we've taken with us more than anyone has been Eric. And it's for that, the knowledge that he has, the way he delivers his message, which is so important. He's said some great things to some of our troops, and I hope it's resonated with them. But yeah, that's a keeper on your phone contacts.
and he's a fucking G, man. He's a real guy's guy.
Yeah.
So he's in there every day. But yeah, bro, this was awesome. I'm super grateful. I love
Thanks
that
for having
last
me.
piece of wisdom of just, yeah, of course, my pleasure, but just allowing yourself to fail. Like, that
Yeah,
is how you learn. So
it's gonna
I
happen.
appreciate it's inevitable. So
Yeah.
thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you. Thank you.